Okay. I want to thank you all for attending and signing in. I know I've already sent an email with kind of the agenda for tonight. So we're just going to go over those things that were in that email as the things that we're going to begin, or some of these things we've already started and completed by way of some of the reforms that we're going to enact here at the Rotterdam Police Department. So I guess we'll just get started with that. And the first thing we're gonna do a little presentation on is implicit bias training, and we're gonna have Lieutenant Gerard take care of that.
All right, so after our last meeting, we sat down, we spoke as administrators, and we looked around and we were able to locate a training that was given online and would be made available to all the officers at the Rotterdam Police Station. So we signed up for that, and we got that out to each of our patrol officers, detectives, and us administrators. It was about a 3-hour course, and it went into multiple topics regarding implicit bias. Some of the topics that we addressed were diversity in law enforcement, the psychology of bias and the real world impact that it has, the current state of law enforcement and community relations, bias awareness for successful interactions, illicit racial bias and decision making, and affecting organizational change and how it starts at the top. Like I said, we put every one of our officers through that. It took about 3 hours. It was at your own pace, done because of COVID, done through a web link. There was some videos in it, multiple slides, and it was actually taught by a retired lieutenant who had over 25 years experience in law enforcement. Plus, he is now also a educator currently at this time in this point in his life. We're still looking to do more trainings like that while COVID is going on, as many as we can, obviously. Usually, as a department, we're pretty heavy in trainings. We like to do more person-based trainings, but obviously with the current times, we've kind of gone to online trainings. So as far as implicit bias, like I said, it was multiple-hour course, and we really tried to just touch on the facts of the current state of law enforcement and what's going on currently, and just being more self-aware as people, as unconscious and implicit biases that we may or may not have.
Okay, does anyone have any questions on the implicit bias training?
Yeah, do you mind if was it the retired lieutenant, did he develop the training or did he use somebody's material as one? And what percentage of your officers participated?
We got 100% of our officers that went through this. He's now retired. He actually has a degree in psychology and a master's in justice administration. And he's also taught human interaction and communication skills for over 25 years.
Is there a name for his?
He does a lot of trainings through Calibre Press, CALIBRE, and then Plus. I don't know if he's a partner in that, but he does a lot of trainings through them.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, anything else on implicit bias training? Okay, we'll move on to the next thing, which also Lieutenant Gerard is going to handle for us, and that is the de-escalation training that we put our officers through as well.
Once again, this November 2020, we were able to do another training. Luckily for this one, it was actually taught by one of our sergeants who just retired within the last few weeks. That was an 8-hour training that we did in person through the department. Everybody in the department, once again, went through this training. And some of the things that he touched on and the goals we had that were hit during this training is creating a fundamental de-escalation mindset for our officers, being able to recognize the effective communication and how that's a foundation for de-escalation, understanding the dynamics of a person in crisis, recognizing self-triggers and those triggers in our partners and peers. And we spent a lot of time in that, realizing that as good as we can be ourselves, we also have to be able to police or look at the partner or the other police officers that are on scene, and be able to help them out in case we see anything going on with them, as far as trying to help them de-escalate or have to take over ourselves to de-escalate. We have to remain adaptable to how changing situations come about during a call. Obviously, the lengthier a call can go, even if it is a short call, but the lengthier it can go, there can be ups and downs. There can be times where it's de-escalated and that might start to rise. There might be some type of tempers that flare, and we're trying to get back down to the lowest level of escalation possible. And then finally, we were to understand and utilize the principles, practices, and techniques to bringing an incident to a successful conclusion. Obviously, that's our goal on any call that we go to, is to have a successful conclusion at the easiest way that we can, by using de-escalation and not trying to make a situation physical or can't think of the word I'm thinking of right now, but we're trying to keep every situation as low sorry, as geez.
Are you maybe intensity?
Yeah, like the lowest intensity, the lowest not tempers, but to keep everyone on even keel at the whole, at all times. Obviously, officers and people that we deal with, there's ebb and flows, and we're just always trying to keep it at the lowest possible scenario that we can. And we also, regarding that, actually, I have one more thing, sorry. As part of, I know last meeting, we also gave some departmental orders out. And one of those departmental orders was use of force. And through this training, we actually decided that we're going to add a level into our use of force regarding de-escalation. And we're going to put in there, when circumstances reasonably permit, officers should use nonviolent strategies and techniques to decrease the intensity of a situation, improve decision-making, improve communication, reduce the need of force, and increase voluntary compliance. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, and voluntary compliance at all stages of anything that we do.
All right, anyone have any further questions on the de-escalation training and the policy change? Okay. All right, moving on. One of the other things that was in the agenda was our response to emotionally disturbed persons or suicidal callers. That's something that the department is also going to be changing. And that goes for every agency in the county, every police agency in the county. This idea was kind of brought about between talks with our director at the Schenectady County Unified Communications Center and the Northern Rivers, which is a mental health care provider in the county, and I believe they also provide services over a pretty wide swath of counties. I think it's 6 counties in this general area. So that idea was brought up between both of them, and it's kind of been in the works for a while. This model that we're going to be using has been successful in other counties in the state, Broome County being one of them. So we're looking to implement this into our county as well. So what it will look like is the dispatchers have all been trained and already received the training, and they have their protocols that they're going to have to go through. So when a caller calls in and the dispatcher determines that person is in a mental health crisis or suicidal, the dispatcher will go through a risk assessment with that caller. And through that questioning, they will be able to determine if that person will be eligible for this diversion that we're going to be doing. And if that person is, through that risk assessment and the questions that they ask, they're going to be transitioned to a crisis counselor. Northern Rivers has agreed to take on those calls. And right now they're not open 24 hours a day for those calls, but we're looking to get to that point. So the call, if the caller is okay with being transferred to a counselor instead of having an officer respond to the house, where currently any call like that, an officer is immediately dispatched to the house. So this is just a way of maybe trying to handle those calls a little bit better and get them to a counselor immediately instead of having it go through us. So the call will be transferred to a counselor if it's acceptable and the risk assessment determines that that's feasible. The officer will also at the same time on his mobile data unit receive a notification that this call is taking place. And so he will see on his screen that currently a crisis counselor is handling the call, but he also, that makes him aware that, hey, if the crisis counselor calls back to our dispatch center and says, hey, this is a law enforcement type call, that officer knows that, hey, I may have this call that I'm going to have to go to. So what happens is the crisis counselor takes the call and then they run through their risk assessment and they determine if it's a call that law enforcement needs to respond to, or if it's something that they can handle and resolve through the phone call. If it's resolved through the phone call with the counselor, and maybe they have some follow-up services that they're gonna work on, the crisis counselor will call the UCC back, our dispatch center, call them back and let them know no need for a law enforcement response, that the crisis counselor handled the call. If they determine that law enforcement is required, they're going to call our UCC back and let them know that law enforcement does need to respond. But because they're a mental health professional, they're going to go through some questions with that individual and kind of give us a better idea of what the officer is going into. So this is going to work well for us because sometimes we don't always know what we're walking into because maybe the dispatchers weren't trained exactly what questions to ask. And so this will work out for us as well and be more safe for us. Kind of along these same lines is Northern Rivers also provides a mobile crisis unit. We have utilized them already where, we're on the scene. So just to kind of reiterate, let's say it's a scene where we have a barricaded subject who's locked themselves in their house, and they may be threatening to harm themselves or somebody else. That's a situation, obviously, that the police department or law enforcement would need to respond to. And but mobile crisis will come out to those scenes and assist us in any way. If we can utilize them to maybe deal with family members who may be outside and also, upset because of what they're seeing happening. So they're there and they can respond and help us in any way. So that's just something else that is sort of new, and we've already begun to utilize that resource. And so I think that's it I have on that. Does anybody have any questions with that? Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about, and we kind of spoke about this a little bit at our last meeting, was that we were in the planning stages for acquiring body cameras for all of our officers. We have gone through a process and we've decided which company we're going to use for those body cameras, and I expect that they will be implemented here within a couple weeks to a month. All of our officers should have them. So I'm just going to have Lieutenant Collins talk a little bit more about that process and how that will look as well. Jeff, you're muted. You're muted. You're still muted. There you go.
I consider myself somewhat tech savvy, so I'm embarrassed. But thanks for everybody joining here tonight. The Rotterdam Police Department has always been an early adopter of technology and things like that, thanks to our administration and town board letting us do it. We have had in-car audio and video for a long time, which has not only held our officers accountable for a lot of their actions, but proven them to be justified in what they do and a lot of complaints against them. So having audio and video is a great tool, and as time has gone on here, I think the public and the district attorney's office and people looking at these cases almost expects this type of video to accompany cases going through against people or interactions with people. Unfortunately, I think the way the world is now, nobody believes anything unless they see it. So obviously law enforcement has to change with those times as well. And we're happy to do it, especially at this police department being such a well-trained and generally a great acting operational police department. So yeah, over the last 6 months or so, well, the other thing with our in-car cameras, the problem we did see is there was a limitation because of the recording took place from the vehicle, that if something happened a little bit too far away from the vehicle, we would lose the connection of the audio, which then in turn lost some of the obviously the evidence that we wanted to capture, or video, whatever you want to call it. So we did some research over the last 6 months. We did pick a body camera that will interact cooperatively with the in-car system. That body camera will capture all audio and video when an officer's interacting with the public on a police call or otherwise. And it would all be transmitted back to our station. Just a couple things to note about it, good things. They automatically activate in sync with each other, the in-car and the body camera, which is worn on the officer's vest. So you get a point of view, video and audio, wherever the officer may go. There's triggers to that automatically occur that sometimes the officer cannot do in the heat of a moment. Certain triggers are turning the lights and sirens on in the vehicle, unlatching a gun lock in the car, and certain other things that somebody in the back of the car would activate a camera as well. And a few others that are slipping my mind right now. I apologize, but heat of the moment type things that will automatically activate that audio and video for capture. So I don't want to bore people too much, but we will have that hopefully, within the next month or so. We have a soft date to get the body cams up and running. We're excited for that. And again, I could talk away a lot of time on this, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask and I'll help you out.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. I understood about the different triggering mechanisms that would engage the camera. My question is, what about when an officer is on a call responding to a scene, exits the vehicle? Is that a default? It's always going to be on? Is it only sometimes? That's kind of what I'm specifically thinking about.
Yes. So an officer, if an officer responded in a non-emergency type situation, it wouldn't necessarily turn on its own. However, we have a department implemented policy for body cameras that they are directed to turn them on for all interactions that are police. Obviously if they're home at dinner, they don't need to have them on, but any interaction with the public, it needs to turn on, and there are only certain circumstances that need to be documented immediately if they were turned off during that time.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions with the body cameras? Okay. All right, so the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about here was community engagement. I know at our last meeting, I went through the list of the things that our officers are currently doing. And yeah, I'll just run through some of that stuff here again. We do child safe IDs. We go to the elementary schools, and we're taking a photograph and a fingerprint and descriptors of the children at the school for the parents' benefit and ours as well. That is all going into a database just in case with the unforeseen and an unfortunate event that maybe a child turns up missing. We have those identifiers in a catalog and in a database where we can use those if needed. We do a bike safety program with first graders. So the PBA, our Police Benevolent Association, they provide helmets to those first graders, and they go out to the school and they fit test those first graders. They do that once a year. So that's something that we do in our elementary schools. We do child safety seats where we have officers who are trained on installing child safety seats for new parents, for current parents who may want to ensure that their even older children in seats are properly restrained in their vehicles. We do that on. We actually take appointments by phone. If somebody calls here, we'll take care of that for them. So those are just some of the things that we do. We're looking at doing more, and we're looking at assigning officers as community engagement officers. We already have some officers who are interested in doing that. So once COVID kind of subsides here, we're going to look at starting to get those officers out in our communities and begin to do some stuff. And it's great that we have the interest that we do from those officers in wanting to do those kind of things. So that's something else that we're looking at. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. All right, that's all I really have by way of our agenda. But obviously, if there's something that anybody else wants to bring up or talk about, we can do that.
I just had a question about going back to implicit bias training. It's not specific to the training, but just in terms of your department, the police department, what is it diverse? What percentage of your force is Caucasian, people of color, male, female? Do you have practices and procedures in place to do more recruitment of diversity, some goals in that area? I'm just curious about that. Is that an appropriate question for this forum?
Sure, absolutely. And currently we do not have any officers, any minority officers. We do have, I believe, 4 female officers. And throughout my time here, we have always had about 4 female officers. We actually just hired a new one within the last month. As far as recruitment, that's something that we can certainly look into for the future. There's not been any plan in place where there's a recruitment for minority officers, but that's certainly something that we can look into. So I guess we'll just finish up the meeting here, and kind of wanted to let you know where we go from here. And as you may know, the governor's order required that a police reform plan would be in place by April 1st of this year. So what that's going to look like from here on out is the legislation will have to be drafted, which will go over some of the things we discussed today here on our agenda. That legislation will be drafted and presented to the town board at a public meeting, and those meetings will be open to the public where people can come in and express any concerns or anything that they may want to say based on the reforms that we're doing. I will get that information out to you. Those dates aren't set yet, but I will get that information out to the collaboration members once those dates are set, so you can come if you'd like and speak on anything that you may want to speak on at those meetings. And so by April 1st, that should be complete. But again, I will send that out to everyone so they have an idea of when those meetings are going to take place. Does anyone have any questions on that, on the process from here? Okay. All right. So and if anyone has any further questions, anything we talked about tonight, or even at our first meeting, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You all have my email address, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Now, I wanted to thank you all for your attendance and participation. I feel like I should apologize here because we seem to have a low turnout tonight, which I don't really know why that is, but I do appreciate all of you who have taken out the time and participated and shown interest in this. So I want to thank you for that. And again, I guess I'll just end here with don't hesitate to call me or reach out to me by email if you have any questions, or if you know of anybody else who may have a question about anything that we're talking about. It's, just reach out. It's not a problem. So with that, I think we'll unless anyone has anything else, I think we'll end the meeting. All right. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Before you leave, this is Miriam. I have a question.
Sure.
When will the minutes of this meeting be available? Because I'm sorry, I look it throughout my email and I didn't find an agenda, and that's fine. But when will the minutes be available?
So there won't be minutes, but the meeting itself I recorded.
Okay.
So we will post that to our own website, and we will also look to our town website and post it on there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, anything else? Perfect. Again, thank you very much and have a good night. Thanks.